Nothing in life is risk-free. Some of the hardest things that people give you are not STIs. It could be broken hearts. They may mistreat you. There's a lot that we are willing to take risks on when we start becoming intimate with people. STIs is just one of those things that we take a risk on.
Hey everybody, this is NPR's Life Kit. I'm Marielle Segarra, and that's Evalene Dacker, a family physician in Oregon.
A big focus of my work is to destigmatize sexuality as part of our wellness and health care.
And look, there are risks to having sex. STIs exist, so we're going to talk about them and give you some language to have these conversations with a partner about STIs and more broadly, about sex. Because for something that's so fun, sex can be really hard to talk about.
I think this all starts really young, and it's been happening for a long time. But I have to say, from my personal experience in high school, they brought in someone who was an abstinence-only sex educator, and the message that she sent was a really harsh one. I remember her saying, if you had sex before marriage with anyone other than the one partner that you were going to have for the rest of your life, that you would be like a ball of tape that would roll through life picking up stuff. And then by the end of it, you were going to be just this disgusting piece of tape with all this like lint and dirt and whatever stuck to you, and told, in some cases, medically inaccurate information about these infections. What do you think is the biggest misconception about STIs?
That once you have them, you wear a scarlet letter, that you are marked as being something other than pure. Even our language around STIs, like when somebody says that they don't have an STI, they use the word clean versus negative. So STIs in our current sex education is really used to put fear into people versus really educate people of how to navigate them.
Right, even thinking about that word, it's what's implied in its shadow. If I'm clean because I don't have an STI, what does that make someone with an STI?
Exactly.
Dirty?
Exactly.
Right?
I like to tell people it's like the worst STIs that we give each other are shame, guilt, and fear. And we walk around with that a lot. We walk around with that baggage of, oh my gosh, if I have sex with more than one person in my life, then there is this thing that's going to give me this shame. And if I ever come back with something positive, then that's going to mark me as not desirable.
So let's do just a primer on STIs. There are two main categories, right? There's bacterial and viral. Can you talk first about bacterial?
Yeah, so bacterial infections, the main ones that we talk about are gonorrhea, chlamydia, and syphilis. The difference between those and viral are that they're treatable with an antibiotic.
Okay, so once you treat them, they go away entirely.
They go away unless you get reinfected with them, yes.
And then what about viral?
So the viral infections are HIV, HPV, and herpes. Our body does tend to suppress these with our own immune system. So people who have a strong immune system may never even know that they had something such as HPV. Some viral infections, though, aren't suppressed just by our immune system, like HIV, and we have to take medications to actually decrease the virus so it doesn't become transmissible.
I wonder, given that nothing is risk-free, how someone can come up with what their rules are for themselves or what their guidelines are for themselves. Because I feel like when you go into these conversations with a new sex partner, you kind of need to know what you're comfortable with.
There's no answer of like what is right. And really, I think that as we navigate our own bodies and our own health, we start discovering the things that are right for us. You know, when we're young, we're willing to take more risks. That as you start learning your life a little bit better in your body, you're like, oh no, I can't do that. That doesn't feel good to do that.
I don't want to do that.
Right. People ask me like, how often do I get tested or when should I get tested? And I'm like, every 3 months or 3,000 miles. You know, a lot of it has to do with your, how you are having sex with people.
If you were my sex educator and you're talking to 9th grade Marielle right now, what would you say about STIs? Where would you start?
I would start with saying that one of the things that sex education doesn't do is teach you about relationships. And they don't teach you about yourself in relationships, things that we need to talk about to build the foundation of sexual self-awareness.
Evalene has a framework for conversations around sexual health called STARS. She's going to tell us what that means.
STARS framework is about what are your sexual health needs? What do you need in terms of STIs? How often do you test? How do you discuss that? The T is your turn-ons. What do you want? What do you need to feel safe? The A is your avoids, your boundaries. What don't you want? And all of these things, like, you figure them out as you're living life. Nothing is stagnant. You don't know the answer to all of them right away. The R is your relationship intentions. What is it that you want? What does sex mean to you? And what is it that you need from somebody? And the last S is one of the most important, and that's your safety needs. How do you feel safe? And it's more than just using barriers and protecting against undesired pregnancy, but like, what do you need safe physically, emotionally, spiritually, and culturally? As you understand yourself better and you understand your needs better, it becomes much easier to communicate that with somebody. And communicate it early in the relationship versus later on.
Now that we have the science and the tools, let's get into some role play, where we walk you through what this conversation might sound like if you have a negative or a positive STI test. We've got 2 scenarios for you. I think the first thing I want to ask, though, before we get into this is, where are we having this conversation and when?
I always think that the ideal time is before your clothes come off.
Okay.
You know, when it's starting to look like, oh, this may be going into a more intimate sexual exchange, that's the right time. So hopefully it happens before we are kissing.
Of course, it's never too late to have this conversation, even if your clothes have already come off. So let's start with scenario 1. Dr. Evalene Dacker and I are at the bar on a date. We haven't had sex yet or even talked about it, but we did brush shoulders earlier and that felt pretty electric. We want to have a conversation about STIs and Dr. Dacker is going to bring it up. A small disclaimer here, this might sound kind of awkward. Dr. Dacker and I had just met, but these conversations are worth having. So here we go.
I like you, and maybe, you know, we might decide to move into some more intimate space. Are you wanting to talk with me about this?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, yeah. The last time I was tested for STIs was in December, and I was tested for gonorrhea and chlamydia, and I was tested for HIV and syphilis, and they were negative. How about you? When was the last time you were tested?
I think 5 months ago, and everything came back negative, but I have had a couple partners since then.
Okay, great, right. Do you use barriers with your partners?
For some things.
I really like to use barriers with my partners until I know that we both have been tested negative. Part of this, too, is like, I want to tell you a little bit about what I like and some of my turn-ons. And I really I love what we're doing right now. I love really good conversations. And I think, like, when I'm engaging in good conversations with somebody, I feel safe. I don't really like to engage sexually with somebody if we're drunk, especially in the beginning.
Like the amount that we've had tonight, does that feel
Yes, it
comfortable
feels
to
great.
you?
Yes.
So, like, you want to go back to
What are some of your needs after if we are to have, any sexual exchange? Do you have any?
I think it would feel really good if you stayed over.
Okay.
And if you're not really ready to do that, then I would just say maybe let's not have sex tonight.
Okay. It's really important for me that we do stay in some kind of communication. And also, if during any period that we're together that you feel like, oh my gosh, this doesn't feel well, or this might be something I want to avoid, please speak up with it. I know sometimes we assume that we're supposed to do something to please each other. And it's really important for me that we continue to stay in this communication. And that's part of what this framework that I like to do, the STARS talk, because it could kind of be fun.
Okay, cool. Let's break for a second and talk about that a little bit. I think this conversation would feel a little sexier than it just did.
Right.
Like,
these conversations are really hard.
Yeah.
Talking about sexuality is really challenging because we have never been taught how to do it. We have no models to do it. We all know we're supposed to. We're supposed to check in. We're supposed to, communicate these important things before we're intimate. But we have very little guidance in doing so, which is why I created this framework so we have a language, so we have a model so that we can actually fall back and say, oh yeah, I'm supposed to check in on what the person's boundaries are. I'm supposed to let them know how I like to be touched. And for sure, we're supposed to know each other's STI status so that we can feel good about what we're doing. I think when we don't talk about STIs, we carry a little bit of guilt about something that brings us pleasure. And by actually bringing it out into the open, and even if it's really awkward at first, and even acknowledging that, wow, these conversations are kind of hard and I'm feeling a little nervous about it. It's totally okay. We're not going to be able to change how we relate to one another until we start practicing it.
All right, let's get into scenario 2. Dr. Dacker and I are at the same bar, only this time she's going to disclose a positive STI status to me.
I really like you, and we've been having so much fun together. I really enjoy our conversations, and sexual health is important to me, and I would like to let you know that I do have herpes. I was diagnosed with herpes about 5 years ago. I break out maybe once a year, usually if I'm very stressed out, and I am really happy to take an antiviral to help minimize any risk of transmission. Do you have any questions about that or concerns?
Yeah, I actually don't know anyone who has herpes, so I might have some questions. What do you mean when you say take an antiviral? What is that?
The biggest risk of transmitting herpes is if I have a breakout, which is kind of like a rash. I get like some sores along my genitals, but usually I feel a burning sensation, and that tells me to not touch anybody or not to have any skin-to-skin contact. An antiviral will just help reduce that and help reduce how much virus that could come out. So I don't take them usually if I'm not engaging in a sexual relationship with somebody, but when I am, and if they want me to, I'm really happy to take something every day to help reduce you getting herpes. And to be honest, I have never known anybody that I actually passed it to because we have these conversations. But I could understand that there could be concerns for you.
Okay, what if we kind of took it slow and we can do stuff that like doesn't involve that kind of contact tonight?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And if you need any resources, I could definitely point you to get more information to people who talk about that, and places where you could read a little bit more about it to make you feel comfortable. And if any time you don't, that's okay too.
Okay, cool. Well, do you want to try this other bar?
Sure, let's go.
Okay, so that feels like a healthy exchange. I wonder, I can imagine there would be other situations where someone would receive that information and then, for instance, clam up or get really uncomfortable. Maybe they feel and have absorbed a lot of the messages that all of us have about STIs. Now, let's say I, as her hypothetical date, don't react so well to this information. What might that sound like? I don't know, it just makes me feel a little weird. Like, I wish that you told me before we went out a few times. You know, I don't know if I'm going to be comfortable with it.
Yeah. Some people are really uncomfortable with the idea that you can get an STI, from a partner. So I understand that you might feel a little bit conflicted. I'm here if you want any more information or support around that. And it's also okay if we don't engage in any sexual activity. I really enjoy having conversations with you, and, we can continue doing that.
I think I might be ready to head home soon, actually.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll call you.
Sure. It was a nice night. Thank you.
Yeah, good to hang out.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, it's so hard to say stuff like that.
It's hard because, you're not going to convince somebody who's scared.
Yeah.
Already. There's really the people respond in one of three ways. Okay, no thank you, tell me more.
So I wonder if you have any thoughts on, if you are the person who's disclosing and someone reacts in this way, how to not internalize that.
When you've had an STI and you're living with a chronic STI such as herpes, sometimes you know that people are going to reject you and that it can be scary. I know that some people only date other people who have herpes or are herpes positive because they're scared of being rejected. There's no one answer of how to not feel upset or disappointed or rejected, because we're human and we have those emotions, especially if we really like somebody or want something from them. By having a bigger conversation around intentions, desires, needs, actually helps take off the onus just from the person who's disclosing and normalizes the whole conversation. So that's one way that I help people who have chronic STIs not just feel like, oh my God, I have to be the person who brings it up, and when do I bring it up? It's really about like, hey, let's see if we're even on the same page in what we want or if we like each other. And then if we are, then it's important that the other person knows this about me.
If you were picking a word for how people should approach this conversation around STIs, what would it be?
It would be curiosity. Curiosity about that person, curiosity about what they want. And if you approach specifically the STI conversation with curiosity, then it means that you're open. It almost implies that you can't be judgmental about it. Sure, there may be fears that are part of the conversation, but approaching it with, I want to know who you are, is a really great way of leaning into a relationship, starting a sexual relationship with someone.
Yeah, I love that. It's like, whatever it is, bring it on.
Right.
Okay, time for a recap. There are 2 types of STIs, bacterial and viral. The bacterial STIs are treated with antibiotics, and the viral STIs can be suppressed by your immune system. But if they're not, you can take antiviral medications for some of them. Those make it less likely that you'll pass the virus to a partner. There are several things you can do to try to prevent STIs. Get the HPV vaccine, take PrEP, use barriers like condoms when having sex. But again, nothing is risk-free. Not sex, not driving a car, not going out with your friends, nothing. But we do these things because it's important for us to connect with other people. When you bring up this conversation with your sex partner, don't just focus on STIs. Talk about what you're into, what turns you on, and what doesn't. And try to have the conversation before your clothes come off. It's easier that way, but it's also never too late. There's more of my discussion with Dr. Evalene Dacker in the podcast version of this episode, where we get much deeper into the science of STIs and break them down one by one.